This is our theme music. We've got theme music now. Escaping dystopia. Escaping dystopia. I don't know, something like that. All right, so escaping dystopia. Hello, how's it going? I like my theme song. All right, so what to talk about this evening? We just put up the outline, so if you want to refresh your thing, you can do that. I'll try not to drink too much, but I do have a bit of a throat tickle, so there's some coughing and whatnot going on. The wonderful kiddos do occasionally be a little bit sick and pass along the germs, and they get to you. Let's close that so we're not using bandwidth. Watch yourselves. So the Dallas Cowboys lost. Sad face, right? It is a good song. We're gonna get a whole band like someday, and then we'll have like the Escaping Dystopia Dancers. How to avoid death. No, the Cowboys lost. That sucks. I know it's not political and it's not like a big deal for some of you, but they, man, 3rd and 20. How do you give up? Just grab everyone. There's a few things you can do. Oh man, that was rough yesterday. So I wasn't in the mood to chat and talk, and there is a little bit of mood and energy thing that goes with this whole show. So, anyway, so you saw that, and some of my friends, if you're watching, you saw some of the kiddos. So, got to hang out today and have a wonderful little snow day vacation, MLK Day. We are going to talk about that a little bit. I've got something great to read when we get to it a little bit later. If we do that. Did we lose everyone now? The song was so good. It's all good. Something I wanted to talk about real quick to start off nice and fun. This thing, you'll see me doing this sometimes with people. I decided to give it a name, and I might even give it a hashtag, and I might even get a URL at some point. But the notion, I think it's actually, I wonder if it is a real thing. I probably should have Googled this before we got to this point. The notion that I'm talking about, I wonder if it's the same notion, because you always have these ideas, right? And then, did somebody come up with this same term? But what I'm talking about here, yeah, that's not really an actual thing. This notion of recursive analysis, this is something that I do a lot to pull things apart. This is a little bit similar to kind of deconstruction, and you'll see this part of something we do try and do here on the show sometimes is pull apart arguments and see what's inside of them, and that's how you have to do things. You'll see a lot with the way arguments go where something leads to something else, and then they'll bring up another point and then go around to another point and then try and deflect to another way and say, well, that's not true because of this, and then going back here, and then you have to pull back and unwind the whole thing. I don't know if you've ever seen me do a couple of these conversations like this where people try and do that, and then you have to unwind the whole thing there at the end. But anyway, I decided to call that kind of stuff recursive analysis. We'll talk about that soon. Hey, is the is that movie out yet? Because I kept teasing it. That's kind of an old joke for everybody who's watching the show for a long time. The Arrival movie. We're going to talk about that and have a really boring show before too long. I found with some of the streaming stuff here, and people, if you're the one person that's telling me is watching, I don't know. It seems like the longer that I go on, then eventually some people catch up. So I'm going to do a little bit of filler before I get to too much stuff. But there is something super exciting. So if you are the one person watching, I've seen a few people like stop by, but whatever. Bubblegum Team is still a real thing, and it's actually time to get to work. This is the last show we're probably going to have before the inauguration, unless there is some sort of crazy, wacky stuff that happens between now and the inauguration that absolutely requires me to have a show. I don't think so. But I did want to mention that, thank you, darling. Bubblegum Team will be out in effect this next Saturday, the 21st. All across the nation, actually, to make it clear that there is quite a bit of opposition to any sort of extreme agenda that tries to be pushed through. There's a lot of people on quite a few edges around the country, to say it with just complete and utter understatement. We had votes this week to essentially undercut the Affordable Care Act. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, too. We have the president-elect feuding on Twitter with a civil rights icon on Martin Luther King Day. We have all these crazy appointments going on. This is all stuff we're going to talk about tonight. I'm trying to give you a little preview so you stick around for the fun stuff. And then we'll finish on a little personal note. But we've got a couple people tuning in now, so I wanted to talk about a little bit about this Martin Luther King Day feud that our president-elect is having with Congressman John Lewis. If you don't know Lewis's history, he did a lot of marching, got beat up a bunch. He's been working for this stuff for a long time. To call him an all-talk, no-action kind of guy, considering the amount of change that this country has seen in the last 40 years. Again, this whole change that the country has seen generationally, and he was beaten when he tried to go vote. He nearly got killed, and now he can vote okay. I mean, that's a sea change in the country. And this is one of the people who led that sea change by walking into the baton and right? There's other people who did this who died, and he got to stick around, and he won and kept fighting. So that's a little bit of John Lewis's history. Now, what happened is the Democrats finally had a closed-door private meeting with Comey to talk about, hey there, director of the FBI, why did you totally kill our candidate in this last election? What's up with that bullshit? And it sounds like, with all the Russian stuff going on, and this is my theory, we'll see if this proves to be correct. I think they had, of course, the FBI is investigating probably a couple of the links on Trump's campaign to the Russians in a way that might be a little bit of criminal. There's the Logan Act stuff, which came up during the calls from Flynn to the Russian diplomat right after Obama was going to kick them all out. So there was also, of course, that whole Roger Stone thing, and then the WikiLeaks contacts. If the FBI has some actual hardcore evidence of the Trump campaign talking to the Russians and is just waiting to prosecute, while at the same time had nothing at all on Hillary's actual emails or anything wrong, but Comey wrote a letter about the emails, which flipped the whole election in the last 2 weeks. That's why the Democrats came out of this meeting with Comey and these guys and were so fucking pissed. Because if that's the situation that you have, then we had a sort of a coup. And that's why you had John Lewis coming out and being like, he is not a legitimate president. This is going to be a very, very interesting term and concept as we move forward. The whole notion of a legitimate president. And by the way, this goes right back in Trump's face, dude. I mean, what brought him to national prominence as a Republican politician, quote unquote, was his whole birther bullshit. When he was doing that, I've got true evidence that it's fake and all this. I mean, folks, I know a lot of people don't remember very well. And the way that human memory works, this is how gaslighting is possible. Because people rewrite every time when you remember things, you're actually rewriting it into current term memory. The way your brain works, I'm not going to go into the way memory works, but that's why gaslighting works, because memory is a bit malleable. And people don't remember this stuff that's just so ridiculous. So he called Obama illegitimate. And then we had this crazy election with all the Russians helping him, and then he won't say anything bad about it. So John Lewis comes out and he says, "No, he's not illegitimate." So, I mean, it's huge. That's big. And it's big as well because, again, when Trump was doing that to Obama, it was big. And there's still, at the end of Obama's term, something like 40-50% of Republicans didn't think he was actually an American. So this whole notion. Now, the difficult part about this, both sides are the same kind of, he's illegitimate, you're illegitimate, who's illegitimate, who's illegitimate, you're all illegitimate. Bunch of bastards. But the thing is, during the campaign in 2008, this guy named Barack Hussein Obama shows up out of kind of nowhere. I knew who he was, but a lot of people didn't. And then he comes, he's from Hawaii, he's got this weird name, blah, blah, blah. Oh, is he really American? Was it real? Because, I mean, some people, they don't know their own history sometimes. And, oh, yeah, of course, I was born in Chicago. I was like, no, you weren't. But you were born in... But he wasn't. He was born in Hawaii. He never lied about this. So there was a reason during the 2008 campaign for Obama to produce a birth certificate in order to establish himself legitimately as a candidate. He did that, right? And that was the end of it for everybody who's rational. And this is where you have this different rational, legitimate, who's not, who's the, blah, 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 how to differentiate. So he produced evidence to make the fact that people saying that he wasn't American, they're wrong. He is. Here's the birth certificate. You're wrong. Now, on the Trump side, what he needs to do to prove his legitimacy from some of this standpoint for so many people would be the tax returns. Would be great. Because it's coming out now that I think, and not only, you've got the whole PP tape and all that, and there's probably more tapes, but there's also his financial history and who bailed him out when he was so screwed. And there's a lot of dirty money behind him. And that's the other part of it, too, that can't come out. So if you want to establish this kind of legitimacy, and this is what this whole feud was about this comment by John Lewis about him not being just legitimate, which is, it's big. This is big. The kind of rift that these words, this is big words. There was also, and this goes to a little bit, we're going to talk more, kind of transition a bit into some of the appointments, because part of, we have this kind of outrage. Both he's feuding with the civil rights icon over Martin Luther King Day weekend. Meanwhile, they're having this appointment debate, if you will, with Jeff Sessions. He just stated what we're all thinking. Who's he? Sorry. I'm pretty bad with the pronouns sometimes. And then I read stuff and I'm like, wait, what was I talking about when he said... John Lewis? I think, I read a big long thing. I actually have a good long thing that I read. It's actually a really good rundown of the last year about leading to that "not my president" thing. I'm not my personal. I'm not like quite. I don't think those words mean a whole lot. Whether or not he is the president. There's this no personal ownership thing. If you do, that's more of an emotional attachment. And I don't like the guy. I think he's a moron. He's going to do really poorly. I think there's a lot of questions about him, legitimately leading the country that are big questions. And this goes back to get back to some of these appointments for this week. For Jeff Sessions, and this is what we're fighting about now, right? So he's going after Lewis. And I think a lot of some of this Twitter stuff is to distract a little bit from people putting up real opposition to his appointments. Because once these people are in, they can start to just do stuff. Jeff Sessions being Attorney General is really big. The voting laws and how we elect these people to govern us goes to the heart of our notion of our democracy and what we call ourselves and how we govern ourselves. These are the things that people care so much about that they do fight and die for. And you have in Jeff Sessions someone who is testifying in Congress that he's not aware of anybody who, would be, put out by, maybe, some sort of, law that would say you had to have an extra ID with your grandpa's name on it, and you have to be able to multiply this, that, and there's the laws that they put, and when you saw the emails both in North Carolina, what up, G? That's by far my favorite nickname that I've ever had. Nobody knows where it came from, but it's awesome. The laws that in both Texas and North Carolina that they passed, like within hours of the Voting Rights Act being gutted, and then to turn around and be like, well, I don't even know, and there's a quote, a couple quotes on here, but this is one of the ones that came up, and it says, Sessions has perpetuated the myth of voter fraud to support new restrictions like voter ID laws. Quote, we have seen fraud repeatedly, and there is a problem if you don't use an ID when you go to vote, because you can vote for some other name that you know was not available to vote that day. And this is what he told CNN back in August. There have been, basically, it looks like 4 cases of voter fraud in 2016 out of 135 million votes. So, again, it's not, and there's been, just to cover this, well, I don't remember them Russians, they didn't hack no machine, so they didn't steal no election. That's not any way, shape, or form what people are claiming that the Russians did during this election. So if people say that, you can just quickly say, well, that's just over there, and that's not what we're talking about. But the problem with Sessions very much goes to enforcing these laws. And I've got a lot more about that one we'll get to a little bit later. There's a few other appointments. One, on the fun part, happy news. A lot of these appointments, I didn't get to watch a lot of the testimony this week. I work for a living. I do this for fun and because I think it's important, but I don't do this for money. So I didn't get to sit around and watch the thing, so I had to read some summaries. One of the funny, great ones, Monica Crowley had to withdraw her name because of her whole plagiarism scandal. Oop, I guess shouldn't just copied that stuff. Yeah, so that's not so good for bad people, so that's good. So, Bubblegum team get a win on that. One of the funny things, I think it's Mike Pompeo, the guy who is going to take over for the CIA director. He came out and kind of threw the WikiLeaks under the bus, which he has to if he wants to run the CIA. This is one of the things that's really odd about this whole going after our intelligence agencies. Is people have to run them, and the same thing against all these agencies. This is going to be, and we will definitely be talking about this, because as far as escaping a dystopia, you want to have the people running the bureaucracy actually believing in a bureaucracy and that we should have this stuff running. And I've talked about this. This is from like one of the first shows, was just that whole notion of who keeps things running and who keeps the lights on. And these are a lot of this stuff when we talk about the Department of, Department of Energy. Gonna be run by Rick Perry, who didn't even win Dancing with the Stars, I guess. I don't know. The FBI and Comey, I'm so sick of that. I think Comey needs to resign. The whole coup just was out of control. He's got I think they get 10-year appointments, so he's got another 3 or 4 years if he wants to stick around. I don't know. I'm a little odd on him. Mattis came out and basically contradicted Trump on Russia. Trump has yet to, in any way, shape, or form that I've seen, condemn Russia. And, really even hard... he kind of just... It's so odd. This is why I, do believe the whole compromise storyline, because it's just... How harsh is he with everything else? Everyone else. He's going after Merkel and just anything, but he won't ever say anything about Russia. Looks like Rex Tillerson for Sex State. Again, this is the climate's the one that's going to die here. You've got $500 billion of their deal in the Arctic with Russia. So again, they are looking at global warming as natural phenomenon that opens up new potential markets that were once ice-capped and frozen. Now we can go pull the oil out up there, too. We can sell it dang near anybody, especially now. So the other guy, Tom Price, this is another one that might actually go down in flames because Tom Price, for running Health and Human Services, he's a guy who's totally against the Affordable Care Act, of course. He also has been busted now after having bought some stock in a company and then trying to pass a law to help that company and make some money. We'll see. The ethics stuff, the people do still care about this stuff, as noted. Even Republicans claim to. Again, even Trump ran on the notion of draining the swamp. Now, he ran against the swamp that he was claiming was Washington insiders that he's filled his cabinet with, and Goldman Sachs, who he's also filled his cabinet with. So, again, he's complete and utterly full of shit. What's going to be interesting about his appointments and how this works out is he's giving them, and they've contradicted him so much that he had to come out and tweet that it was his plan that they contradict him. And he's just giving them independent, give them their heads, go do what you want, which he'll do right up until the time that something goes bad and he can put their head on a platter for the people, because that's how he's going to do. There's a New York Times article, Judd Apatow. He's the guy who writes all the comedy movies that you've seen, or did last, I guess, in the aughts. He was the aught guy. Anyway, he talks, he's like, I've seen a lot of Apprentice, so he figures out how Trump works, which is basically Trump just sits back in his golden chitter and then waits for somebody to come tell him what happened, usually that he trusts, like his kids or whatever, and then he makes a snap decision and sticks with it like it was the greatest decision ever that you've ever heard of, and nobody ever. So this is going to happen with all the secretaries and stuff. They have a lot of power. A lot of them are completely and utterly incompetent for what they're doing. We'll see how the Betsy DeVos thing goes. Because that one I think there's going to be a great deal of opposition to, because no teachers like her that I'm aware of at all. So we're going to see how this whole cabinet thing works out. So it looks like, they're going to usually presidents get their appointments, and when he's got the majority of the Senate, they're going to get there. So it's just a matter of knowing who they are and what's happening. And so that's why we're talking about it. So now let's move on to the tweets. I don't know if you have given in and follow Donald Trump on Twitter yet. I don't know really what to say. There's a lot of people, especially in the news as well, who are gearing up to intellectually battle this, and they're not really sure what to do. It's like, should you follow it? Should you care? Should we react to everything that he does? And all the crazy stuff. He's setting up, there's a narrative that he's building, and it's very much, the press is all bullshit. You have to go directly to him to get any kind of truth, because everyone else is a liar. And that's what he's doing. He actually did go directly after the CIA director, Brennan, by saying, oh, were you the one who released the fake news dossier? Which, by the way, is completely true. I don't doubt that there's really bad stuff on him, and they've got quite a bit on it. But the problem is it's not gonna. You're not gonna be able to nail him down. The last few presidents during this transition period had done double-digit press conferences, double-digit real press conferences to actually interact with the press, get to know them, build these relationships. Exactly, shutting down the media authoritarian style. That's exactly what I want to talk about. So there's a great media story out there. I'm going to link to it later. It's called A Message to My Doomed Colleagues. A message to... What is my Russian accent? I'm sorry. I'm better at accents when I don't have to do this. I know CNN does... They do. It's something they're going to talk about every day. And they're always reacting to it. But this article is called A Message to My Doomed Colleagues in the American Media. And it talks about just one of the things that he goes into is just welcome to the era of bullshit. You're not going to get him pinned down. You're not going to get a straight answer to this. You've seen this already, that it's just this is saying that, that's saying that. The way that, and this article goes down, and there's actually a great picture of it, because you've got Putin, and what Putin does now is he has a press conference every year, a single press conference right around the New Year's, which is much bigger in Russia. It's more like their Christmas, New Year's kind of thing for the Orthodox thing. And it's so, they've got so many people there, and this is part of why they're planning on, like, Lashana was just talking about shutting down the media. They're talking about closing down the press room in the White House and moving them to a much larger room so they can fill it up with, what's up, Renee? And they can fill it up with all sorts of other random media bloggers and whatnot. So you'll have Breitbart and then the guy who's randomly likes Breitbart and then the Drudge and everybody else. And there will be 12 different ones of these so they can dilute it. So there's no real authoritative the authority and the notion, the breakdown of authority is how this area of bullshit takes over. And make no mistake about it, Trump is a very, very authoritarian style. So once that style becomes reflected in our government, you'll see some difficult things. Like I said, he used Twitter to go after John Brennan, the ethics office, going after that already. That attack, sorry, I got a little bit off track on there because I wanted to talk about this whole Putin story, because the way Putin runs this press conference and the way that he destroys the press is important. Even the press who's going to try and cover him. And you saw it in the press conferences last week, the idea of asking, oh, you finally get picked. Oh, I'm going to pick 2, 3, 4 questions real quick and try and pin him down. And he's going to ignore 3 of them, pick one of them, do some BS, and do this other thing. And there's not going to be this camaraderie. It's not all the press is against him. Remember, he skipped over CNN to pick Breitbart, which the guy who runs his strategy used to run recently. So he can go to friendly media as well to hide. So you're not going to get that comeuppance, that true point, that final thing. You're going to get a whole lot of bullshit. And just a whole lot of bullshit. So I just, build your bullshit filter. That's what we got to do. And pay attention to stuff like this. The Chaffetz thing, going after the ethics office. So the ethics office basically said in his press conference with those fake papers about how he's divesting his company, they basically came out and said, no, it's not going to work. And so now they're like, well, Chaffetz is the Republican guy in the House. He runs one of the House investigative committees. Jason Chaffetz, I believe his name is. He's the poster boy for douche nozzles in the House. He's gonna bring this guy in to be like, well, why are you making all these public comments? Why aren't you just talking to these people in private? And he's like, well, I'm trying to talk to them in private. They're not listening to me, and they're not selling his businesses. Here's the thing: the conflict of interest stuff is just it's just blatant. You can't have something like he's got and be president and keep them separate in a way that there's no conflict of interest. It's not. That's why everybody's like, you just got to sell everything and just get rid of it. You just got to get rid of it, and then you put it in a trust, and then when you get out, we'll tell you how the trust did. And I mean, if the economy does well, your trust probably gonna do well, but you don't get to you can't. So again, as far as the whole impeachment thing, I do think if nothing changes this next week, when he takes the oath of office this next week, he will be in violation of the Constitution. They actually claimed that foreign dignitaries giving his companies money is not an emolument, and that he's going to sign over his profits to the Treasury, which I mean, do we get to see how much your profits are? Do we get to see your tax returns at that point? The Fed does that, by the way. You know that? You know the Fed, like when the Fed makes money, you're like, well, the Fed's just making all this money for... Yeah, and then the profits get signed over to the Treasury because that's what they do. So if he's turning over his company's profits to the Treasury, then we just bought his... So again, it's utterly corrupt. All right, so there's that, and we get tweets about it too. So don't kid yourself on that one. The Russia stuff you need to read and pay attention. The corruption is bad. The way that he's going after businesses now, right? Like, oh, I'll tweet you good, you bad, you good, you bad, up and down, and that starts to affect stock price short term, which a lot of CEOs are very... He says that he is above the laws. It doesn't apply to the president, which he is technically correct, as he has pointed out, because he is the one who enforces the law. I will not arrest myself. Yeah, how'd that work out for Nixon? So that's why we do have a lot of these checks and balances. This is, in the simplest terms, the U.S. Constitution is very straightforward like that. He's above the law because he is the enforcer of the law. He's Judge Dredd, totally. You guys didn't know that America was so cool like that? We actually elect Judge Dredd, and now it's a moron. Oh man, Obama was such a good Dredd. Obama was the Dredd. Sheriff Nottingham, that's a good one. He's pretty solid, and then that puts old King Putin John as the scrawny lion over there. I always think of the Disney version of Robin Hood. That's the real one, as far as I'm been corporatized. Just kidding. Oh, so he went after the ethics office. He also had an interview with the New York Times where he confirmed my theory by attacking NATO and endorsing Russia again and again and again. Weakening. This would be if he was completely owned by Putin. This would be what he would be doing, talking smack about NATO and talking up Russia. So I mean, even if he's not, why are you doing this? So nobody will answer that. So he also talked about the ACA replacement, the Affordable Care Act. Did you folks know that was Obamacare? I think you did. I think everybody's watching this probably knew that. I did. I think that was a big mistake, actually, originally by Obama. He's not a perfect politician, and I think his ego let his name be attached to it, and they didn't fight it as much as they should have, because calling it Obamacare let the people who hate him hate it, even though they used the Affordable Care Act to stay alive. And so I don't know if that was... I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong on that. But anyway, so they're going to get rid of it, and they talked about the replacement, which they're going to do at the same time, I guess. I know. But we're going to have insurance for everybody, Mr. Trump said. There was a philosophy in some circles that if you can't pay for it, you don't get it. Well, that's not going to happen for us. So in their interview, Mr. Trump provided no details about how his plan would work or what it would cost. He spoke in the same generalities that he used to describe his healthcare goals during the campaign, that it would be great healthcare that left people beautifully covered. He also offered no explanation of how he would persuade Congress to pass his plan, though he indicated that he would have the backing of the House Speaker Paul Ryan of Wisconsin and Senator Paul Majority of Kentucky. He said only that, I won't tell you how, but we will get approval. He seemed to be thinking that, this is from a New York Times article, that his recent post about the ethics office was what pushed him over the edge, and not the thousands and thousands of outraged calls that jammed up the switchboards. So yeah, they killed an ACA, I think, when we lost it, and when they couldn't fix stuff, when they didn't have enough votes in Congress to fix anything in the ACA, I think is when they actually kind of lost the edge on that. But they needed to win this last election, and the Russians made that very difficult. Anyway, around the local stuff on the ACA, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but both my personal congressman and my Republican senator have been getting hammered. Actually, the Democratic senator is getting pretty beat up as well because he voted against Bernie this last week. But Mike Kaufman is my senator. Yeah, they've got ideas. They're just not. They won't ever put them down on paper and let anybody see what they are, because they literally are pretty damn close to what was passed with just these very minor tweaks that don't even make much difference. Oh, by the way, for those of you who don't know, that notion of selling healthcare across state lines, what that does effectively, and this is why we have federal law in the first place, is this means that no state gets to regulate anything. So if you can sell across state lines with no controls whatsoever, it's not like you can say in Colorado, oh, you can't sell that kind of plan from you guys over there in Wisconsin. No, they can sell whatever. So there's no regulation whatsoever if you go with the selling plans across state lines. Companies right now can sell across state lines. They just have to conform to state regulations. Ta-da! So anyway, this is one of those ideas that they've had for the ACA or for healthcare to fix. Just sell across state lines. The other thing is, of course, health savings accounts, which is great if you have money to save to pay for healthcare and you do good budgeting. Those tend to be more useful and used by middle class, upper middle class folks. So it'd probably be okay for myself, but I don't know that they're going to replace this stuff. But so there's been a lot of pushback on the local level. Whether or not that sticks for long enough, we'll see. I don't know, but there's been a lot of pushback. I'm so excited to get out this next week. I hope everybody does get out in March. I'm going to read something here. This is going back to Jeff Sessions and about voting rights. They are so important. That's how we did. HSA sucked for him. Yeah, I can really see how it wouldn't work. Because if you don't have enough money in it and then you run out, then what? I guess you're just... Okay, that's it. All right, there's my tax-free money that wasn't enough to cover what I needed. Now what? Off to Kickstarter. So, this whole Kickstarter healthcare system we have is fucking sane, by the way. I know, I don't want to, I do and I help people out, but this is just not how things should work, I don't think. I don't know, maybe, but how, then it's just, we have a social network. It's called a social contract, right? Can that work? Yeah, I still got the deductible side of it. All right. So, wanted to thank. I'm not quite done yet. There is one thing. It's going to be. I wanted to read something to you, if you will permit me. This is a letter that was written to Congress. 30 years ago. It covers some of the points that I wanted to talk about and some of the things I talked about earlier. Just to go over real quick some of the things we did talk about. That Bubblegum team's going to get out there this weekend and do it. Lots of appointments and crazy stuff with the tweets. I don't know. I wouldn't follow the tweets if you don't really want to. They're just know that whether or not he's going to be tweeting after he's inaugurated. The first tweet post inauguration will be interesting, and then it's just going to go downhill and be boring from there, and dumber and dumber. But anyway, there is still a big fight that's going to continue to happen. It's going to happen this next election cycle, and it looks like it's not something that's going to be settled for a while. And this is a real fight, so I want to read this real quick. This is a letter written from Coretta Scott King to Congress. I'm going to read a few select paragraphs on this before signing off for the evening. Let me have a little drink of water. It says, free exercise of voting rights is so fundamental to American democracy that we cannot tolerate any form of infringement of those rights. Of all the groups who have been disenfranchised in our nation's history, none has struggled longer or suffered more in the attempt to win the vote than black citizens. No group has had access to the ballot box denied so persistently and intently. Over the past century, a broad array of schemes have been used in attempts to block the black vote. The range of techniques developed with the purpose of repressing black voting rights runs the gamut, from the straightforward application of brutality against black citizens who tried to vote to such legalized frauds as grandfather clause exclusions and rigged literacy tests. The actions taken by Mr. Sessions in regard to the 1984 voting fraud prosecutions represent just one more technique used to intimidate black voters and thus deny them this most precious franchise. The investigations into the absentee voting process were conducted only in the Black Belt counties, where blacks had finally achieved political power in the local government. Whites had been using the absentee process to their advantage for years, without incident. Then, when blacks, realizing its strength, began to use it with success, criminal investigations were begun. In these investigations, Mr. Sessions, as U.S. Attorney, exhibited an eagerness to bring to trial and convict 3 leaders of the Perry County Civic League, including Albert Turner, despite evidence clearly demonstrating their innocence of any wrongdoing. Furthermore, in initiating the case, Mr. Sessions ignored allegations of similar behavior by whites, choosing instead to chill the exercise of the franchise by blacks by his misguided investigation. In fact, Mr. Sessions sought to punish older black civil rights activists, advisors and colleagues of my husband, who had been key figures in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. These were persons who, realizing the potential of the absentee vote among blacks, had learned to use the process within the bounds of legality and had taught others to do the same. The only sin they committed was being too successful in gaining votes. I do not believe Jeffrey Beuradgard Sessions possesses the requisite judgment, competence, and sensitivity to the rights guaranteed by the federal civil rights laws to qualify for appointment to the federal district court, is what she said, Attorney General now. Based on his record, I believe his confirmation would have a devastating effect to not only the judicial system in Alabama, but also on the progress we have made everywhere toward fulfilling my husband's dream that he envisioned over 20 years ago. I therefore urge the Senate to deny his confirmation. Coretta Scott King, 30 years ago. So, that's it. I think that was the guy. I mean, this is the guy who Trump nominated. It says Martin Luther King's wife's widow wrote a letter against him. Today's Martin Luther King Day, so I thought I'd throw that back out there. The voting rights are important, having this kind of stuff here. I do think there's going to be an assault on voting rights if Sessions gets in and Trump stays way unpopular, which he is. So, gear up, kiddos! It's inauguration week, and I hope everyone has a great week. I'm going to have a good week. Started off awesome, and now I guess it's tomorrow. And then we're going to go march this weekend. So, peace out. I will talk to you again next week. We are... I would love to do deep dive anytime you want, man. El Paso, dude. That's awesome. Oh, man. Got that commas, yo. Commas. Anytime. As some of you might know, on the personal note, we did it. 2017 will hopefully bring us another Taylor, so we'll see. Really excited about that. That's kind of one of a lot of people get down and worry about the future and wanted to be like, no, I'm so blah blah blah. And I mean, I'm doing a show called Escaping Dystopia, but that doesn't. No way, man. More good people is good. MLK Kiddos is awesome. So. All right. Thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight. Had some good talks, I think. So, hope everyone has a wonderful week, and I will talk to you all next week. And hopefully I'll get my website updated. stuff to do, man. All right, peace out. Good night.